In this show, we're taking you around Europe using different means of transport to see how the EU is boosting your mobility. After Paris and Warsaw, our next stop is the Hungarian capital.
Welcome back to Europe Rendezvous. I've just got off a night train from Warsaw. I'm now in the Hungarian capital, Budapest. Cohesion funding from the EU is very important in financing transport, but there's a twist because here in Hungary, although the country was eligible for about 22 billion euros in cohesion funding in this EU budget, a chunk of that money has been frozen because of the major concerns about the rule of law in this country and also because of the alleged misuse of EU funds under the government of Viktor Orbán, who was in power here for 16 years from 2010 until April 2026.
It was a stunning victory for the Hungarian opposition. On April the 12th, Peter Magyar and his TISA party won a landslide, netting 138 seats in parliament out of a total of 199 seats. That's a supermajority that should allow him to reverse the legacy of Viktor Orbán. During his 16 years in power, Orbán rocked the EU with his ties to Vladimir Putin, but he also weakened the rule of law at home, undermined the independence of the media, and targeted LGBTQIA minorities. The EU sanctioned this autocratic turn by freezing about 22 billion euros in funds. Now Peter Magyar promises a return to democratic norms.
We face many challenges. We must recover the 22 billion euros in EU funds. We must finally kick-start the Hungarian economy. They've been lying to us about that for years. They claimed that we had a fantastic year when it was actually a crash.
Another big sticking point was the siphoning off of money to the Orbán clan. In his native town of Felsút, which only has 2,000 residents, he financed a football stadium for 4,000 people, a tourist train, and other little-used facilities. Under Orbán's rule, the country became the most corrupt member of the EU.
The nature of corruption has also changed because it has become more and more centralized. So this is also a key word when we want to describe the corruption in Hungary. It has become systemic and extremely centralized, extremely top-down. In other words, corruption has become a feature and not a bug in this regime, which is called the Orbán regime. And this is reflected in public services, including transport as well. So there are less roads, there are less motorways which have been constructed since then. So it can be felt on the level of the average Hungarian that this money does not come in to the country.
Peter Magyar says he wants to make the most of EU funds, and he's pledging road and rail upgrades worth 2.7 billion euros, including a high-speed train from Budapest to Warsaw.
Gabor, so when the EU is seen as an enemy, that has a huge impact, doesn't it?
The first 10 years of the regime was the period of EU funds invested everywhere, but not for the right purpose. For example, sightseeing towers without sites, or infrastructures that were 3 or 4 or 5 times as expensive as the normal price. And many EU money invested in many projects, but few of that investments were effective.
Gabor, I want to ask you, this train behind us, it's actually older than you. I hope I'm not being rude, but it could have had an upgrade with EU funding, but it didn't.
Yes, actually it could have been replaced already in the 90s. But you know, after the end of communism, there was this neoliberal paradigm, and public services or public infrastructure was not really the focus between 1990 and 2010. And then Orbán arrived, and he decided that he won't invest anymore in Budapest. which was an enemy, a cultural symbol of all what the right wing, the far right actually, government hates. So from the beginning, 2010, they were disinvesting already. We definitely need more bike lines, real ones, I mean. After the surprise win of the Green Mayor, Gergely Karácsony, in 2019, right before COVID, he constructed quite a few bike lines during COVID, when, you know, the city was empty and it was possible to have this breakthrough.
So the Green Mayor here obviously is pro-bike and scooters
Yes.
and so forth, and
Yes.
pro-green mobility, but that's not the case with Fidesz, the
Definitely
party.
not. Right-wing governments, especially far-right parties, are not really friends of eco-friendly transports, bikes and trains. They prefer cars. We definitely need a more 21st century vision of what people actually need. And they definitely need more public services, more public transportation, not only for the sake of the fight against climate change, but also for the sake of social cohesion.
For a perspective on all that from the government, which is still in place until early May, I took Budapest's iconic tram to meet an MEP from Viktor Orbán's Fidesz party.
Hello, Andras.
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So we can see a lot of modernization going on here in central Budapest. How much of that is municipality versus national infrastructure projects?
Well, we had a very good cooperation for 9 years between 2010 and 2019 because we had a conservative mayor in Budapest. And Budapest was also had a huge surplus in its budgets. We worked very well together. Since 2019, it has become more difficult. But the government has invested a lot in developing infrastructure. We've used EU funds, we've used Hungarian national funds, because this is the capital city of the country. So it's normal that we invest a lot in the capital city, and we don't only expect the city to invest. Now, the city is in a pretty bad shape in terms of budget, but that's what happens when you have left-wing mayors.
These trams, for example, they're very emblematic of the city. And the EU is now actually financing new trams in Budapest to the tune of 144 million euros. And at the same time, we've seen strongly anti-EU rhetoric from the government of Prime Minister Orbán. Is that a paradox?
The criticism is not against the EU. The criticism is against the Commission and specific policies which is pushing on in terms of migration, in terms of sanction policy, in terms of energy, and in terms of violating the sovereignty of member state governments. The EU budget was decided by all of the governments in Europe. This is a deal which the European Commission needs to respect, which it is currently violating with the freezing of some of Hungary's EU funds.
If we talk just about cohesion funding, 7.6 billion euros in cohesion funds that have been blocked because of the issues of academic freedom, LGBTQI issues, and asylum rules. Is that reasonable that they're applying this conditionality mechanism?
It's totally unreasonable because most of these issues fall within member state competence, not European competence. Education, social policy, family policy, national security. That's why we are saying that these funds are actually blocked for political reasons. The Polish elections specifically prove the double standards used by the European Commission when it comes to freezing or unfreezing EU funds. When the party member of Ursula von der Leyen won the elections in Poland, immediately, just for the promise of doing reforms, the EU funds, which were previously frozen, were unfrozen for Poland. No legislative change had taken place.
To get back to transport issues, what do you think needs to be done to improve transport networks in Hungary?
Well, we're investing in highways, we're investing in energy interconnectors, whether it's electricity, more gas pipelines and connectors, more oil pipelines. We need to invest, we need to diversify, and that is exactly what we're doing.
Now, speaking of those transport issues, Hungary has actually tripled its number of expressways and highways since it joined the EU in 2004. Let's get on the road and take a closer look. Hello, Liliana.
Hi.
So we're about 100 kilometers west of Budapest in a rather innovative spot. What is this?
This is a turbo type level node, a very fast roundabout. The whole idea was to make things faster, meaning that people living in Papa could reach much quicker the regional center here, meaning that they use only half of the time as previously.
So what are the two roads that connect this fast roundabout then?
The one is the motorway from Budapest, basically to Vienna, to the country border, and the other one is an EU-supported express road.
Let's get on the 83 road together, shall we?
Let's there.
Okay. Nice car. Oh, and you've got a driver, which is amazing.
In general, investing in transport is also very good for the single market. There are 3 10T corridors in Hungary. One of them is just along the M1 motorway, to which this road is bringing vans, people and traffic. But there is also another one, the Mediterranean 10T corridor. So you can actually drive from South France through Italy and Slovenia, through Hungary, right to the Ukrainian border, all on highway.
And EU funding was quite important in that expansion.
Absolutely. EU funding was very important. Thanks to EU funding, 5,500 kilometers of roads were refurbished or built. And the length of motorways tripled.
Much of the EU funding to Hungary is frozen.
Well, the 3 biggest operational programs in Hungary are frozen. 55% of them are frozen, and one of them is the Transport Operational Program. But this affects the current programming period, meaning 21-27. And in this programming period, the EU is very much focusing on rail and urban public transport and not road anymore.
What are the transport projects now? What is the future focus?
Currently, the focus is very much on sustainability and decarbonization, meaning that roads are not anymore supported by EU, only local roads that are not asphalted yet. About rail is very much in the focus, electrification of railways, ports, cycle lanes, and electrification of buses, electric buses as well. So this applies also to cohesion funding that we talked about, but it's also applied to the Recovery and Resilience Facility.
Right, let's get on the road to Vienna. About 2.5 hours away, hopefully.
Hello, Robert.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you on an unusually sunny day.
Yeah.
So this is a charging point for ships, and it's co-funded by the EU. What is all that?
Yes, exactly. This is a project, or this is part of a larger project where green electricity is provided to hotel vessels. So when those vessels are moored here at the Vienna station, they can plug in as you would do your electric car.
And it says 100% Ökostrom, which is green electricity?
In Austria and also here in Vienna, electricity is produced with a large extent from wind, from solar power, and also water power is used from the Danube. So basically that power comes back to the vessels as well.
Robert, there's an entire Danube strategy, isn't there?
The Danube is the most international river. There are 10 riparian countries. So we call Danube riparian countries those countries which are on the Danube. Different languages spoken, 7 of them already EU member states, the others not. So this strategy and the programs generated from the strategy are a very good tool to work together.
Especially the Interreg program?
Yes, that's a very good program to organize projects and organize teams together around different topics, such as also for inland navigation.
And also the European Regional Development Fund plays a part, doesn't it?
In the recent program, in the past program, it was around 200 million euros, what the ERDF was co-funding into the program.
Robert, bringing things back to Vienna for a minute, it's actually lacking some key infrastructure, isn't it?
Yes, in the Danube region, we don't have proper transshipment facilities. For example, here in Vienna, there is a very well-established container terminal, but it only transports or transships containers between trucks and rail. If you need, or if you have a container or some containers on a vessel, you need to call extra mobile infrastructure to get your containers transshipped.
Robert, you still have a lot of barriers crossing between different countries, even though they're all on the same river, don't you?
So we at Pro Danube International have a slogan saying same river, same rules, but you still need to report country by country in different languages, EU according to EU rules, according to non-EU rules in non-member states. So this is one of the challenges, and this is something where digitalization can help a lot. And European funded projects also can help to improve digitalization, and then we can come to less administrative burdens.
Robert, thank you so much for being on the program.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
The bell tolls for the end of this program. I hope you enjoyed this whistle-stop tour of 4 European countries at breakneck speed. I'll see you in our next Europe Rendezvous show somewhere in Europe.